The Imagineers of the Disney parks have the daunting task of creating new and innovative attractions, and for the most part, they nail it. Sadly, not all of their ideas come to fruition. These are the top 5 Fantasyland rides that got cancelled at Disney World. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. After the wild success of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride in Disneyland, Imagineers designed a ride based on the adventures of Ichabod Crane. The ride style would be extremely similar to other dark rides in Fantasyland, but guests would ride in a hollowed-out jack-o'-lantern, taking them on an eerie tour of Sleepy Hollow. The ride setting would gradually become more chilling until guests would come face to lack of a face with the Headless Horseman. Unfortunately, the idea was scrapped in the late 60s to reduce construction costs of the park, which at the time was the largest private construction project in the world. Mary Poppins. Recently, Disney has quietly canceled the Mary Poppins ride to be located in Epcot's England Pavilion. But long before Epcot was even a park, Imagineers planned a Mary Poppins ride to take place in Fantasyland. Guests would saddle a merry-go-round horse, much like the characters from the movie did, and take a tour through one of Bert's chalk drawings of the English landscape. The tour would include a fox chase and a horse race. Sadly, this ride too was scrapped to reduce the initial construction cost of the park. Villain's Mountain. After the closure of the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride, Imagineers were tasked with designing a new ride to take its place. One of these ideas was called Villain's Mountain. The exterior of the ride would have been designed to look like Bald Mountain from Fantasia. Guests would be seated in a log flume, similar to Splash Mountain, and float through a series of scenes featuring various Disney villains until they came up against Maleficent and escaped down a waterfall to safety. Executives loved this idea so much that they even considered dedicating a whole new land to the villains, called Villain's Village. Unfortunately, this idea of a villain-themed area kept growing until executives wanted to build a whole new park dedicated to villains and wanted to save this ride for the new park. At this point in time, Disney has chosen not to move forward with the villain-themed park. Fire Mountain. A second team of Imagineers that were also tasked with replacing the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride came up with a new roller coaster called Fire Mountain. This hot new coaster would take place in an active volcano. Guests would board a traditional roller coaster carts with the tracks under the ride vehicle until halfway through, the ride coaster would switch to a suspension-style coaster, giving guests the sensation of flying over lava. Once they escaped the active volcano, the ride would transition back into a traditional style with the rails underneath the cars in time to pick up the next group of guests. Executives loved this idea too, but wanted to attach an IP to the ride. Fortunately, the studio was close to releasing the cinematic masterpiece Atlantis, The Lost Empire in 2001. Unfortunately, the movie was a box office flop by their standards, netting only $66 million. This, along with concerns about how the volcano would fit with the theme of Fantasyland, ultimately got the project cancelled. The Enchanted Snow Palace. Designed by legendary Imagineer Mark Davis in the 1970s, the Enchanted Snow Palace would have been a gentle boat ride through an ice palace belonging to a snow queen. The exterior of the building would have looked like a giant glacier, decorated with grand windows, doors, and spires. Interior of the ride would have had a cool temperature to offer some relief from the Florida heat. Guests would board boats, similar to those of It's a Small World, that would take them down a river of melted ice. On their journey, guests would pass by numerous scenes, including dancing polar bears, an orchestra of penguins, and a snow cave containing frost giants and ice fairies, all while Tchaikovsky's The Nutcracker played in the background. Finally, ride-goers would meet the Ice Queen herself before returning to sunny Florida. The ride would have no doubt been a hit with park-goers. Sadly, at the time of its conception, executives were trying to introduce more thrill rides that would appeal to an older crowd. This, and the massive price tag, ultimately shelved the project indefinitely. While the park's attractions, past and present, have amazed and thrilled us, it's hard not to wonder how many of these scrapped rides could have been Disney park classics. But, as we all know, a good idea never dies.